And we're back. Welcome to Scare City. I'm joking. How is everyone?
Great. Good this week.
Yeah, I haven't got a clue what Nick's supposed to be. A witch? I don't know.
A witch, type of witch, yes. I don't know what type of witch, but something of a
Very
witch,
first male witch.
type.
Ashley, well, she's had that costume on all year, I'm unsure.
Minus the face mask, but yes, and the hair towel. But yes, pretty much.
That's our 1-year-old filling his nappies. That's his gift to you, which I'll send in the post, Ashley, for you.
Creaky sound effects, like it.
Welcome, Lisa.
Thank you.
How are you?
I'm fantastic. Thank you.
You're welcome. Now, this Halloween special, since obviously it's Halloween on Tuesday, I think. Is it Tuesday?
No.
Thursday. See, I've lost track of days.
Yeah.
We'll talk about how to reclaim your life. So, where do we start?
I think we start with our guest.
Yes. Tell us a little bit about you, Lisa.
So I am a childhood abuse survivor and thriver. And I've been on a very long healing journey since I was 19, and I'm now 61. So it's been a long journey. And along with that, not only have I done my own healing, but I've also helped many women begin their healing journey from their abuse.
That's good. Sorry, there's just a lot of noise in the house. Nick, Ashley, do you want to carry on while these downgrade?
Me go on? Okay, so let's see, what else? So what else do I want to say? I don't know what else. I don't know what else to say. Guide me here a little bit.
Yeah, okay. Because obviously we all go through challenges in our lives, but what sort of strategy mindset did you have when you was going through a shit time?
Yeah, shit time is right. A long time shit time. So for most of my adult life until probably 10 years ago, I was in survival mode. So I was just getting through the day moment by moment, really. And, when you're in survival mode, you're in just such a heightened state. And so, God forbid something go wrong, because it didn't take very much for me to just go over the top. So you can imagine how stressful that is, not only on me being in survival mode, but anybody around me as well. And so that was my life. And it was really frustrating. And I could see the patterns and I could see the cycles. What I couldn't see was how to get out of it. And, for many, many years, there hasn't been a lot of information out there about trauma or childhood abuse. It's only been really the last probably 15, 20 years where they're understanding trauma, and they're understanding that it's different than talk therapy. When you get into trauma therapy, it's different than talk therapy. And so, I struggled for many years because it wasn't out there. And so I tried a lot of different modalities, and slowly I would kind of, heal. But it's over the last 10 years that I've really done a lot of the healing, like getting my voice back, having a voice, setting boundaries, and just doing a lot of inner healing.
Yeah. Speaking of healing, Ashley, do you want to take over?
Sure, I guess. I like that you mention, Lisa, that it's not something that is really, I guess, dug into very often. I can remember for my husband and I being foster parents before we started having kids of our own, and going through some trauma-informed training. But I really don't think that it necessarily touches that deeply on how to help these kids really through that.
Yeah. I actually had a guest on my podcast who actually specializes in this. They take on foster children. He had adopted 2 children that had been severely abused. They didn't know it when they adopted, and what they went through. And as a result of that, they have created things to help, especially the foster system, because it's so broken. It's so broken. And
Absolutely.
we don't know a lot. We're learning a lot more now. I mean, it's coming out. I think we're really just scratching the surface right now.
Yeah, I would definitely agree. Well, and I think what can make the system as broken as what it is ultimately boils down to these kids are just a number. These kids are just a sign. They're not truly human. And when, as a system, we keep re-traumatizing them by exposing them to the same people that created the traumas in the first place, and we keep talking about the reunification piece, I think that's what keeps the system the way the system is.
Yeah.
And that was always our biggest struggle as foster parents. Why do we keep re-traumatizing these children? So when you constantly are repeating that cycle for them and you're putting them in that survival mode versus being able to thrive, that's when you have, okay, now they're going to go back to jail. They're going to go back to drugs. They're going to go back to alcohol or whatever situation that helps them cope. Right. So what type of coping mechanisms did you find yourself using when you were in that survival mode for so long?
Oh gosh, for so long I didn't have any. I was just getting through life. Now I'm, it's easy to jump back into survival mode, right? Because I was in that place for so long that it's so easy to just go there automatically when something happens. And the benefit I have now is I have the awareness to recognize when I'm doing that. And then the modalities, one of the first things for me is breathe, because I have a habit of, one of the things that I did for years was I always walked around all tight. Like my ex-husband would call me and I'm on my cell phone is literally sitting next to me. He's like, "Did you just run to the phone?" And I said, "No, why?" He said, "Because you're breathing hard." And he did that like 3 or 4 times. I thought that was weird, but it was just because I wasn't breathing. And so breathing for me tells my brain, calm down, we're okay, we're safe. Let's get out of fight or flight mode and get the irrational thoughts down. So breathing is a big one for me. The other thing I'll do, sometimes I'll go for a walk. I'll just kind of break what I'm doing, and getting outside and getting in the sun, getting in the fresh air, really helps me a lot. And so those are the things that I go to first. And I'll tell you, when you jump into that survival mode, it's still difficult to get yourself out of that. You have to consciously get yourself out of that place.
Yeah.
Nick?
Yeah, I mean, I think that with trauma or struggles in life, often we can have this sort of snowball effect where something will happen and then it'll lead to something else happening, and things will build up. And if I give an example of, I've worked for a few homeless charities in my life and jobs, and a lot of them, they started by someone would lose their job and then struggle financially, and that put pressure on. Then they'd cause them to split their wife, and then they'd end up homeless, and then obviously they could develop drink and drugs, and then obviously mental health problems. But it all started with just losing their job, and then and I think that's can often be the way with you have one often thing that triggers it, but it can snowball, and then what we find suddenly we have all these things happen together. And I think obviously reclaiming your life is obviously about having that control back where you have feeling you've got no control, and turning onto a path where even though it may be a long journey, you feel you've got a little bit more control. And I know with my own experiences and my own journey up and down, and there's been it's times where I thought nothing's changing, and I get it's easy to get a severe depression. You think nothing's changing, and I'm stuck in this. I mean, you have the emotion, make progress, and I think it's finding what works. And I think it's it's very much to reclaim your life. You've got to try and have a gratitude of, you know, be grateful every time you do achieve something, even if it's a small thing, or because we often reclaim your life when you're in this, in a traumatic situation, or you're in this overwhelmed situation. It's no often quick answer. You know, it can be a long journey, and I think we celebrate. You know, recognize, you know, every little achievement you do have, and every little positive thing you do have, and to me, I think it's also about set little goals. And it could be like, you know, you said, Lisa, you know, going for a walk, and you know, if that's something that works, you know, going for a walk, then that could be something you know, a positive thing you can be proud and say, well, I went for a walk today, it's a positive thing. But also, it can be a goal as well. So it can be many things. But I think it's, you know, I think reclaim your life can be something that, you know, it could be something that could be from, you know, a divorce, you know, redundancy, or it could be something from some really, you know, traumatic and, you know, abuse that's taken place. I think there's so many things that can lead you on that thing of that thing.
Yeah, you know, you mentioned gratitude, and that is a really good point, and that is one of the things that really was one of my things too. Is
sure.
You know, I remember there was a story where I was driving to work, and it was a long drive for me, and I hated my job. I hated what was going on at the job. And so that whole hour drive to work, you know, I'm sitting there ruminating about how awful it is and going over the whole day. So you could imagine the state of mind I was in when I pulled into the drive, you know, into the garage. I was not in a good place. And it was weird. I got out of the car, and it was like a voice said to me, you need to stand up and own this. And I want to hear you being grateful. And so literally the walk from my car to my desk was probably a good 5-minute walk or so. And that whole way, under my breath, I'm sure anybody walking by thought I was crazy, but under my breath, I was literally going over all the things I'm grateful for. And I was finding everything. And the state of mind I was in when I sat down at my desk was very different than when I pulled into the driveway, you know? So gratitude is huge, because you can't be unhappy when you're being grateful.
No, that's good. That's good.
Absolutely. And this is where it comes to where I was seeing posts about gratitude and rock bottom and abuse and stuff like that. Is why do men choose to sit in the car after they pull in the drive? Because they sit in the car for about 10-15 minutes afterwards. I think it gives them time to breathe.
Yeah. It's usually my husband talking on the phone. Yeah. But, you know, and Ashly, to your point too, you know, when you were talking about the foster kids and them acting out, you know, we need to realize that we act out for a reason. Kids don't just wake up one day and they're just a bad kid. Like, kids aren't just bad kids. They're acting out or behaving for a reason. And that's our signal as adults to dive in and try and find out what's going on. You know, it could be as much as some kind of mental breakdown, or it could be, you know, they're being bullied at school. It could be anything. And so, you know, kids don't just wake up one morning, even adults, we don't just wake up one day and we're just a jerk without something happening, you know?
That's a good point about, you know, how to reclaim your life and how to help others reclaim their life is to get that point of, really, it's about how can we, you know, support ourselves, support others, and being, you know, open to the, you know, the connections we have, and the you know, the role we can play in like you said, particularly with children. But I think, you know, having a good support network and having people we can turn to support, and having the skills ourselves to, you know, to recognize and support people in need. I think that's, you know, that's such a, you know, powerful thing. I mean, it's obviously why we have shows like this, and why, you know, we have the coaching and it's all for these reasons. But I think, you know, people help people, you know, with people with problems, people support people with problems. It's all people. This is a, you know, good or bad. It's all a people centered thing. So I think, you know, having a support network of people, you know, close to you, whether it's one person or whether it's five people, you know, it's just having those people. And I think it works both ways. I think to reclaim our life, we should look at, how other people we know that we can. I think it has to be, you know, it should be both of those things, isn't it, really?
I mean, the beautiful thing too is, you know, that we've learned about trauma is we can reclaim our life and we can heal from the trauma. we'll never be the person that I think we were originally supposed to be, right? Because things happen. But we do have the ability to take back our lives. And I'm an example of it. I never thought I would be living the life that I'm living now. I dreamed of it, but I didn't know how I was going to get here. And it was just, sometimes it was one step at a time. Sometimes it was big aha moments. It was a lot of stuff that added up that got me to where I am today. And I'm still growing. I have not arrived. I'm still on my journey, and it's not as traumatic now. Like when you first start your healing journey, it's hard, that first time. But that first time you have that aha moment or you have clarity, for me, that is what made me dive in even deeper.
So Lisa, with you, do you have somebody say a vision or mission? This is what I want to achieve. This is, that drives you forward. And when things are hard, you're like, well, that, to have that strong vision that keeps you going. Is that something for you? Did you have a vision of how you want your life to be, or mission that you wanted to achieve, and that helped you along your journey? Is that fair?
Yeah. And what was interesting is when I began to build this vision that I wanted, I didn't believe it. It didn't seem real. I like being in love. What a joke. Yeah. I thought that was all phony. I remember looking at people kissing, thinking, romance, that's a bunch of baloney. I'm living it now. I'm actually living it. So what I'm saying is when you begin to build that vision, it's a really good practice to have. It's a really good practice. It snaps you out of, where you're at today, and it gives you hope, but you're not going to believe it. And I went big. I went big on what I wanted. And even though I sat there going, I can't believe I'm hoping this, but okay. And, it is what helped propel me to where I am today.
Do you think it's a bit of fake it till you make it? It's like, say, if you don't, you've got this vision, but you think you don't believe it, but you'll pretend you believe it, until it does happen, and then you can.
Right.
Do you believe in the fake it and make it attitude?
Yeah. That is a little bit of a fake it, make it. Yeah. And it's like, you're faking it. You're just going along going, okay, I'm going to try to believe this. And then the first time something happens that confirms your beliefs, all of a sudden you get a different attitude. All of a sudden it is believable.
Yeah.
It's possible.
So, Ashly?
I'm kind of like just pondering because it's, hold on. Go ahead, Adam.
Yeah. It is. It's all about taking that step forward, and obviously
baby steps.
It is, and obviously it's same for if you're going through addiction as well.
Yeah.
Whether it's alcohol, whether it's drugs, whether it's whatever addiction you've got. Ashly's got an addiction and trying to have banter with me, but it never works. But it's all right. But she loves me really. But it's all about taking those baby steps and see where it gets you.
Right. And it's, I know people struggle with, I might take a step and it might be the wrong step. Okay, well then it might be the wrong step.
Mm-hmm.
It's okay. It's okay to make a mistake. What did you learn from that? Okay, that didn't work. It didn't work like that. Maybe it can work like this, Yeah. And so that was another thing that would freeze me from moving forward is I was just, oh God, I'm going to make the wrong step. I'm going to be a failure. And anymore, I'm just like, I'm careful about the steps. I don't just willy-nilly go out and just make steps. I do my research. I do my, make sure I feel like I'm making the right step, but I'm not afraid anymore. Once I've done and I feel like I'm comfortable making that step, I just make it.
Yeah. That's what it's all about. What were you saying, Ashly, before you were rudely interrupted?
I don't know. It's gone.
You said you were pondering.
Well, and I think too, as we're talking about like just even the whole trauma concept and how to get past that and reclaiming your life, but I think there needs to almost be a definition for trauma.
Yes.
Oftentimes
absolutely.
You look at it as it's this big, deep wound, like an abuse, whether it be sexual, mental, physical, whatever that is. Mm-hmm. But in reality, all of us have experienced trauma.
Correct.
Because we've all had an unmet expectation go sideways.
Correct.
And that's ultimately trauma. So it can be with our safety. It can be in our relationships. I mean, how many of us have parents that have failed us, or in-laws that have crossed boundaries, or whatever that case may be, friends? It doesn't make a difference, but not one trauma is less significant than the next one.
Correct.
I think that's something that we definitely, as a society, need to remember. And reclaiming our lives, like you said, it's just taking a step. It's just making the decision. But whatever you decide to do, you have to be okay with the outcome of that decision, good or bad. Right. And if you just stay frozen, then you're going to maintain that victimhood and you're just going to stay stuck.
Yeah.
So I think it's really about putting the plan in place, reaching out to the support system and say, hey, can you hold me accountable to XYZ? This is where I want to go. Can you help me get there? And I think a lot of times we just isolate ourselves.
Oh, yes.
We make it this solo island
that
we don't want to share and be vulnerable with people that could be the ones that help us get to where we want to go.
And shame is so much a part of that.
Yes.
Shame is so much a part of that. I had Tim Fletcher on my podcast. You know who he is? He's a complex trauma specialist. He's amazing. And he talks about the big T and the little t, the big T trauma and the little t trauma. And, and the one thing I asked him too, I said, okay, I have a question for you, because this just chaps my hide. I can't stand it. Why is it those of us that have been abused walk around carrying such deep shame, and the ones that abuse us are not carrying that shame? Right? This just seems so wrong. And he had a brilliant answer, in my opinion, and it totally made sense to me. And he said, shame, because I don't believe shame is a good emotion. Shame and jealousy are not good emotions, in my opinion. They aren't in my life. They are not good. And he said, shame is just the set of beliefs you have about yourself. Yeah. And I paused for a minute and I did a real quick scan of my life. And that is so true in my life. My shame is almost gone. It rarely pops up. And when it does, I'm like, okay, why did it just pop up? And I look at it and and it's some belief I have about myself. It's not something anybody else did to me. It's a belief system I have about myself that I have to pull those roots out or change that belief system. And, that to me was so powerful. And, the one thing I'll say in all the research I've done, and I've done a lot of research on trauma, is that one of the things that is so important to our healing is understanding trauma. Because what that does is it creates a separation between our identity and our behavior. Because for me, and that isolation you were just talking about is so true. We isolate because of our behavior, right? I act up, I get triggered, I act up, I look at your face and you're looking at me like I'm crazy. That triggers me more. I'm just going to go be by myself. So there was a point I was making in this. Sometimes I get on my tangents, but that's what I was going to say. It's empowering that I'm learning about trauma, and I'm learning, oh, I did that because of my trauma. That behavior came directly from my trauma. Okay, that makes sense. Okay, well, now I'm not going to do that behavior anymore because now I understand it. And it separates, again, who I am from my behavior. Because I was making my behavior my identity. So that just deepens the shame. That just spirals you down that rabbit hole.
Yeah. I had a great... I heard something from someone recently which I thought was really... this makes so much sense to me. So it was talking about his workshop, and it was talking about people were saying, well, how do you know what's the right decision to make? What's the right action to take in a lot of situations? And, we often, I think, when we have sort of self-criticizing doubts about us and we lose our confidence, we get overwhelmed, we're not sure what's the right thing to do, and he said, and this person said that we will often, most people will choose the most comfortable option, in our comfort zone. And he said, actually, what we should always do, unless we is choose the most uncomfortable decision or action, unless it's clearly not the right one. But if it, he said, because often that will be the one that will take you away, closer where you need to be. That will actually be the right one. That will get you, that will move you along further and help you in your growth, your recovery. Because if you stay to the easiest decisions, the easiest option, then really you won't, you'll be stuck in your sort of bubble and you won't really progress and grow. And I thought that was it just resonated and stuck with me that, if we look at sort of, it's always often so hard, I think, to know, when we've had bad experience and we're struggling and we have a self-doubt or this negative thinking, what's the right thing to do? What can I do? What should I do? And I think I just thought that resonated with me, that actually sometimes the most, the least things are the best.
Yeah, so my next question, and this is for everyone, even in the comments as well, what sort of mindset do we have is when we've been traumatized like there's no tomorrow, turn to possibly alcohol, turn to drugs, or turn to whatever, and then we have our own family and we're thinking, finally, freedom, I'm away from those abusers, but then they suddenly find themselves back in that cycle again.
Oh, yeah. Yep.
Yeah. Back in
That's
that
real
cycle.
common. I've said for if left unhealed, will a person who's been abused as a child go into possibly domestic violence relationships? Yes. It just looks different. I ended up in narcissistic relationships.
Yeah. It's same with the parents getting back involved as well. Not for their son or daughter, but for the grandkids.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
And that's what I'm trying to get at is because obviously there are families out there that have abused the son or daughter, and then the son or daughter's blanked them, and then suddenly they have a child, and then they're suddenly back involved again and trying to abuse them.
Well, there's generational trauma as well.
Exactly.
So the trauma gets into our DNA and passes down through our DNA into our children. Yeah. And again, though, that's bad. But the good thing is it can be broken.
Yeah. Like Gemma's just thought as well about rejection because it triggered his drinking. Like it did with me.
I don't know if this is what you're saying, Adam. Is it sort of about triggers and it, in the sense that is it a situation? Is it sort of a situation? So I don't know if it's say I don't know, say a job. We change a job, but if it's abuse, it's happening with certain people. Is it a hard decision? And obviously, with family, this is what makes it so difficult, isn't it? If it's a family or partner, but is there some difficult decisions you have to make? To remove yourself from those people in life sometimes, because if it's certain people that are having a negative or traumatic effect on you, then as long as you're having a relationship, it's going to be harder to change, to escape that. So sometimes it has to be really difficult decisions, which only the person in the situation can make. But I think that's it's tricky, isn't it? If it's family or partner, then that's
it is. It is. Now, obviously, with my mum, I spoke to her a couple of weeks ago. Well, I think it was like 2-3 weeks ago. But that was the first time I spoke to her in 6 years.
Wow.
So what prompted that, Adam? What was
because obviously people that know me that know that I'm doing the 12 steps of recovery.
Yeah.
And one of them is to make amends with
okay.
that you hold resentment against. And I know that resentment is the biggest trigger to causing relapses. Now, obviously, I've already relapsed, but now I'm back on the sober train again. I'm sorting that out, and I'm getting rid of all resentment in my life. And so I thought, you know what better to get closure than reach out.
Yeah, in my life, I don't have a relationship with my brother. So my abusers were my brother and my parents, and it was everything but sexual. And for years, I cut him off when he went after my son one time, and that was it. He wasn't allowed to be in my home anymore. And I felt guilty for a while. I felt so guilty. Like, what kind of person am I that I'm cutting off my brother? He's my brother, that whole story. And I went through a workshop, which I'm now heading up this workshop. But in the workshop, we were talking about forgiveness. And, she talked about we should forgive our abusers. And that's for us. It's not dismissing what they do. But the biggest point of the conversation is, but if these abusers are still being abusive, you do not need to reconcile. And I recommend you don't reconcile. And that right there hit me like, okay, I made the right choice, because I made that choice. It was not easy, but I was going to protect my son. There was no way I was going to stand there and let him do anything to my son. And so I tell people, a lot of times our abusers are our family. And just because they're family doesn't, and if they're still abusing, now if they've reconciled and you've worked everything out, that's a whole different thing. But if they're still being abusive, you do not have to have them in your life just because they're your family.
No.
I think the sad statistic is that most abuse, and it's like is by family members. It's the same with murders. Most murders are by someone they know, close member. It's normally a family member. It's So I think, that's the sad, obviously reality of most things, isn't it?
And that comes domestic violence as well, because I know statistics does show women are the most victims of domestic violence, but there's men out there that are victims.
There's men out there, and the statistics for men aren't accurate because a lot of men aren't reporting it.
Exactly.
And did you know that 97% of the people that are in prison have some form of abuse in their life?
Yeah.
Like, we got to think about how far this goes and how far it affects, if someone's abused in their life, we all take it different. And, some people like me work through it, like you guys, but then there's others that take a different route. And I mean, if we could eradicate abuse, childhood abuse, just imagine how different this world would be.
Oh, I know.
Here in the United States, one of the things that I do on my podcast is I bring awareness to areas that you may not realize are areas of abuse or how severe it is. And I had a guest on, Bobby Click, and his mission is he's an attorney, and his mission is to bring awareness to about abuse that happens in children's sports. Here in the United States, 20 million children a year play sports, and over a third of them are still being abused today. If you could eradicate that alone, because when Bobby goes and speaks, he says, I asked the audience, how many of you know someone who has a child in sports, and by the time he gets done asking all those questions, just about the whole room has their hand raised. So imagine if you educated that room alone on the definitions of trauma and all the nuances of trauma, which we don't have a real clear Bible yet on that, or an outline on all that. Imagine just hitting that area right there and the difference we can make in the world.
Yeah.
Wow.
Yeah.
It's sometimes I have to take a step back and take a breath, because it's a lot. It's heavy.
So yes, like you said, raising awareness of trauma, because trauma is so many things, and it's what's acceptable, and what's not acceptable. And right. I think I knew someone who was going through domestic abuse, but in her mind she wasn't, because she had this view of, I'm not going through trauma, I'm not being abused, because this is what abuse is, and she had this picture, this extreme picture, which she thought wasn't fitting her, so she didn't think. And I think sometimes, I think that's why, like I said, that education awareness of it's not just what one thing, like, it can be so many things,
Yeah. You've heard of the ACE test, right?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Okay. So Tim Fletcher took the ACE test, which it's 10 questions, and I got 7 out of 10, so I was pretty high. He took that test because because this very reason. There's so many nuances that go on with abuse. It could be, now we've got children that are witnessing, war situations. We've got children that are, witnessing gang, like stuff that they weren't seeing 40, 50 years ago that they're seeing now. So he took that ACE test, and I think it's now 60 questions that he did that goes much deeper and shows the depth of your trauma and helps you to understand it. But yeah, we do need to have like an outline of what this looks like. The other thing, and you just kind of touched on it, there's a lot of people that don't even realize that they've been abused. I had one lady come to my workshop, and she was coming to support another friend, and she was talking to me, and she says, well, I wasn't abused as a child. My parents were alcoholics, but they were fun. Like, they didn't hit me. They didn't yell at me. We had a lot of fun. Well, okay, that's true. But your parents are not in a position when they're inebriated to meet your needs. So that is abuse. I didn't even realize I was abused when I took the workshop, because I realized my brother abused me. I didn't understand the depth of what my brother or what my parents had done. So you're right. We get raised in this normal kind of situation. And it isn't until we start kind of looking around at other families that we realize this isn't normal. This is different.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
And that has an impact on relationships as well.
Oh yeah.
Because obviously I'm in one where my partner's got borderline personality disorder, and I struggle every single day to try and keep up with these different personalities. It's a hard one.
Yeah, relationships are hard. Yeah, I mean, my first marriage, I was married for 25 years and with them for 30, and we were both just hot messes that came together. And although I didn't directly abuse my son, I was really careful about that. Yeah. He was raised in a home of strife. And he was raised in a home of parents yelling at each other. And it was because, my husband had his stuff. I had my stuff, and I was in survival mode. So I was always jacked up, and it didn't take much to, have me go over the top. And I used to joke about it, but I could shred somebody with my tongue. I could be vicious. And so it affected a lot of my relationships. Yeah. Absolutely. And I've gone to my son and I've apologized to him when I realized, my son and I are really close, and, I realized what he was raised in, and I went to him and I apologized and I owned up to it.
Yeah.
There's always that. You can always clean up messes. I did a lot of that.
Yeah. Yeah. Obviously, me and my partner did that at one point when I was drinking. We was always yelling at each other.
Yeah.
And it was just horrible.
Yeah.
Horrible.
Yeah. And when it's happening, it just, God, it feels horrible, but it feels horrible, but there's this weird comfort in it too. It's weird. It's kind of like, it just feels good to yell, but you're just doing all this damage. It's a bad place.
It is. Yeah. So what feedback would you give, and obviously to everyone else as well, what feedback would you give to a relationship that wants to be strong, move forward, but they're still dealing with that underlying trauma?
Well, my comment is absolutely get into trauma therapy. Not regular talk therapy. You've got to get into trauma therapy, because you need to get it out of your subconscious, and you need to get it out of your body, and you need to build a new relationship with yourself. Because part of the reason why I had crappy relationships is because I didn't have a relationship with myself. I had to create a relationship with myself. I had to learn who I was. I had no idea. I spent a lifetime being a chameleon. So, I would recommend that you absolutely, if there's trauma involved in one or both, it's good to go get trauma therapy and get that dealt with first. And that'll kind of take care of a lot of things in the relationship. That's my 2 cents.
Yeah. Ashly, Nick?
I like what you said, Lisa. Now, what do you, as far as, and I'm going to ask a question, when you're looking for like a trauma therapist, what is something specific, I guess, to look for? Because obviously somebody can say that they're a trauma therapist, but are they really? Do you know what I mean? Like,
yeah.
What's something specific that should be really looked at? Like, is there a certain modality that they use? Like,
there are modalities like EMDR. That's the one that I used. And that one that helps a lot of people. It doesn't help everybody, but it does have a great effect. And it is, it's part of what EMDR does, and it did for me, is it removes the trauma memories and we replace them with some better memories or something that's not quite as hard. But I would seriously look for trauma therapists, and there are different modalities, and they will say that they specialize in trauma, because again, trauma gets stored in your subconscious, and it also gets stored in your body. And when we get triggered, it fires up that memory, and you're reliving a memory. You're not just, oh, I have a memory. You're actually reliving it. And so what they can help you do is to change that so that you're not triggered anymore, and help you get it out of your body. For me, it was always my chest or my throat would get real tight.
Yeah, absolutely. If anyone in the comments has got any questions as well, throw them at us. Whether it's about addiction to do with this, or because trauma is caused by anything.
Oh yeah, and addiction is a big one for trauma. That's a real common one, and people do that to escape. It's a coping mechanism that they learned.
It is. I was drinking from the age of 11.
Oh, bless your heart.
Oh.
But now I'm 3 months sober.
Nice, congratulations. That's awesome. And it's a journey. It's a journey.
Yeah. Gemma's put, I found out opening up to a counsellor, a neutral person on the trauma I had dealing with my partner's drinking, it really did help. Yeah. I think it does help speaking to someone that doesn't know you.
Yeah.
A complete stranger.
Yeah. I agree. I always felt more comfortable talking to somebody. Some people don't, but I did. Somebody that doesn't know me.
Yeah. Maybe that's why me and Ashly talk a lot.
Maybe.
What's that?
I said maybe.
Yeah. I suppose about a safe space, isn't it? And when we're speaking to someone who you don't know, but who's a professional, has an expertise, and it's that safe space so that you can say what you want, let it out, let your emotion out, talk about any subject, and that it's confidential, and it's a safe space. And I think that's so important there, because however much we have, friends who may listen, you can talk to them. It's never going to be, it's always going to be a bit harder talking to people in some ways. And I think that's the one major benefit of going to a therapist or counsellor, is that it's no space in it.
I know, because I know for me, like the crazy thoughts that would go through my head, I don't want to tell other people that. I'll tell my therapist, because they'll know, oh, okay, yeah, I get it. But a friend would, like my husband didn't go through a lot of trauma at all. Like he had a great childhood, right? I call him my normal. And so when I don't have a normal. My abuse was as far back. That's a picture of me when I'm about 3 or 4. So I don't have a normal. And so I go to him and I'm like, okay, this is kind of what's going on. Is that normal? But at least when you go to a therapist, it's safe to just say the crazy stuff that's in your head. They're not going to look at you like you're nuts.
Yeah, and I'm like that when I go to Alcoholics Anonymous, where I can just open up about absolutely anything.
Yeah.
And you don't get judged.
Right. Exactly. And that's the thing that's really important that we need to do in our healing, that we spend so much time judging ourselves and being so hard on ourselves. Be curious rather than judgmental. Yeah. And that's giving yourself some compassion too.
Honesty is key. Absolutely. Absolutely. Yeah. Well, this needs sharing anyway. I don't know where to go from this. What about you guys?
I'll tell you a little interesting story. So about myself. So my main business is copywriting, and but there's an up and down. My success is quite stressful, not really at times, and I have been like involved in public speaking and Toastmaster Club for like 10 years. And my 8-year-old son said, "Oh, you should do something along those lines. Do your own club, do your own like equivalent, like a confidence club." He said. And I was thinking, "Oh, how do I get started? Oh, I can't do this." What? And then by chance, like that. Someone I know who's a business coach said that there's a university offering, as part of the course for university training for a design course, where they would build a free website and branding and everything for some new businesses. So basically, I had a chat with them, and they're going to now help me set up my confidence club and create websites and branding and social media for free. And I think it just shows that sometimes things can change. Change. You never know when things are going to get better or change. You can't predict the future. And sometimes, things can change in a second, in a heartbeat. Good or bad. But I suppose it's. I think that just for me that is shows that I would have probably been deliberating for months. I may never have really done this, because I was self-doubt about whether I could do this. But I suppose, there's something about trying to. It goes back to that vision, that however hard the journey is, however much there's doubts come in, which is understandable, that things can improve in a second, things can change in a second. Yeah. And as long as you have that vision, that plan, and you're making small steps, then
those baby steps add up really quick. I mean, one day you look back and you're like, whoa, okay, I'm in a completely different place. How did that happen? And it's just because you took those baby steps that got you to that place.
Yeah.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
Is there any more questions from the comments? Because I know we've got quite a few people here. Ashly, any experience you'd like to share? Because I know it can be very irritating with the in-laws trying to influence and manipulate the parents against their own kids.
Oh God.
I've got started now.
Yeah, let's not talk about that. That might very well trigger me into a spiral spin of emotional reaction. No, that I think what I was gonna say before, I think it ultimately comes down to those boundaries that you want to set up. And sometimes it doesn't even need to be out loud verbally spoken to the person that you want to set the boundaries with. You set them within your house, you set them with yourself, your spouse, your kids, whatever that may be, and that's where they stay. And no is a complete sentence.
Amen to that. Amen to that. Yeah. No, and you don't need to explain yourself.
Well,
you don't need to defend.
Right. And I think that's probably, I've taken like it was a course offered at our church called Journey to Wholeness. And it was one of those things of going through like our childhood timeline and not just childhood, but like middle school and high school and even into adulthood. Like, what are memories that you can put on this timeline? And for me, I had like 4 or 5 pages worth of stuff and even other memories that came up after the fact. But it was the correlation to things that had happened that would trigger me or keep me arrested, if you will, in that developmental stage of why I react the way I react to certain situations now, and those things that trigger me, and just pinpointing and connecting dots. Yeah. So it's just the first layer of the onion. I know there's a lot more things within there, but during that process, rejection is a huge piece for me.
Oh my goodness, I had so much of that.
And I think that is probably a very common one for everybody. But when you can really pinpoint what is the event that happened? What age were you when that happened? And that explains why maybe the reactions and, when rejection happens as an adult. Now I feel like I've kind of gotten through some parts of that. Like if somebody tells me no, they're not interested, I know it's not a personal rejection towards me. It's whatever question I'm asking. But when there's other situations with people in my life that might be more personal, then it feels like the attack. And so it's really figuring those things out and calling them for what they are. Like, this is not an attack on me. This isn't a me thing. This is a them thing. And recognizing that, because people are always going to disappoint us and let us down no matter what. And I think it comes down to, how do we handle it? What frame of mind are we in? And again, setting those boundaries. If they keep crossing the boundary, you set bigger ones.
You enforce the ones. Absolutely. Yeah.
So I think, and sometimes that may mean you have to verbally tell them, like, no, we're not going there. We're not doing that. But then just remembering what values you stand for. What things are you putting in place to protect your family? I've had to do that, where I've had to listen to some of the things that my kids have brought to me and realize, okay, that's a boundary we need to set, and I don't need to explain it to anybody. The answer is no, we can't make it. No, we can't attend. Like, whatever it is, because that is something that, one, puts my kids in an uncomfortable situation, or they know that it's not a healthy environment. So I have to listen to what they're saying too, and then gauge it from my own experiences. So
I can relate to that.
Anything, Nick? I think the only person who knows what's best for you is you, and we're all individuals. And I think there's something about, we don't need to justify ourselves. And I think often we feel, well, if we say, where our boundaries are, or what we're not comfortable with something, we feel we need to justify why we think that, or what it is. And actually, I think in life, we can explain why we're doing something, or why we're saying something, but we don't need. I don't think we don't need to always feel we'd have to justify things. There's a big difference between explaining why we're doing something, or why we said something, and feeling the need to justify, because there's a big difference. And I think often when we're struggling with our own mental health and our confidence, there's an over exaggerated need to justify everything we do or say. And I think actually, we don't need to. If we believe, if we're setting boundaries, or we're saying, what we feel comfortable with, or what we're doing, we have to own it and sort of say no. Explain it. That's it. I think there's a certain amount of what's right for us, what's right for a person, is what they think's right.
Yeah, the only expectations we need to live up to is ourselves.
The justification comes in when the people that we're telling no to and setting the boundary with shame us and guilt us. That's when the justification comes in.
And that's when
they show their true colors.
It's true.
That's where the justification comes in, because we get guilted and shamed. And
boundaries
owe somebody something.
Exactly.
True.
And for me, boundaries was such a foreign word to me. I didn't realize what boundaries were until I was in my 30s. And so much of that is, when you're a child and you're being abused, your boundaries are being walked all over, and you try to set boundaries and they're never honored. And I just remember when I first started learning about boundaries, and it was a ministry or Bible study I took in church, and I was like, boundaries, what is that? And I struggled with it for many years, because then I was a people pleaser, right? So I couldn't set boundaries, because then you might not like me if I tell you no, and I went through the whole justification, and I would give in, and I was miserable. So boundaries are critical and important, and you'd be surprised. Actually, more people respect you when you set boundaries than I think push against your boundaries.
Maybe because when we're setting boundaries, people respect that, but at the same time, they judge you more as well, especially on social media.
It's
That's why we've got keyboard warriors.
Just think of it this way. Are you ever going to see those people in person?
Right.
Most likely not. So if they don't like a decision that you make, that's their issue, not your issue. And not only that, but if you're posting it on your public profile space, yes, it might be public and you're sharing it. And they might say, well, if you don't want people to give you an opinion, then don't post it. Well, you're free to move on. Keep on scrolling.
There we go.
So it's that type of a situation where, again, you don't have to explain squat. You know how many family members I have blocked and unfriended on social media because, one, they don't have the same viewpoint as I do, and then they try to come to my space and they try to argue their frame of mind. And I'm like, no, this isn't up for debate and discussion.
Well, have you noticed within the business community as well, or even doing podcasts and anything like that, when you're actually starting off, the judging you saying it's not going to work out, it's going to fail, you deserve nothing and all that, and then when you hit successful, 5 years we've been doing this now, suddenly like, can I join?
Or, I knew you could do it.
Yeah, deep down I knew you do it. Deep down I knew you could do it. Like, deep down, that's not good.
Move on. Yeah.
We've had them.
Yeah, I think everyone that has doubters in their group who are very quick to criticize, and it's the easiest thing in the world to criticize someone. I think it's, anyone can do that. I think actually it's the better. I think what we need more in the world is more encouragement, motivation, inspiration. I think that's what leads to a better world. But I think it's too easy. And you see in social media, why is there so much on social media? It's just made it easier. It's just made the whole process of criticizing and
being a troll.
I was told by a family member that my husband and I wouldn't make it 5 years when we got engaged. We'll be together for 20 years this February and married for 17 with 7 kids and 2 grandsons.
How's he caught?
You got well, you put your evidence is there then, Ashley, isn't it? That's that's it, isn't it? Yeah, that's it. Yeah.
It's kind of one of those things of watch me.
Yeah. Well, I think that's a good. That point there actually is like when people do, criticize or doubt you, and I think there should be an element of watch me then, Actually, but in your head, even just say, "Well, I'm going to prove you wrong."
Absolutely. The same person
to them directly, but in your head, at least, you could say, "Yeah, well, actually, no, I'm going to prove you wrong."
And the same person told me I couldn't have a baby unmedicated. I had 6 of them unmedicated.
You know what? Kerry was the same as well, and I think she'll be okay with me sharing this because obviously she's beautiful to me, but she's been told off medical people she can't get pregnant. She's too fat to be pregnant. 3 healthy kids later.
There you go.
Yeah, this is our life now.
What is wrong with people?
Yeah.
What's wrong with people? How long have you got?
I know, right? You know what though? One thing that keeps coming up as we're talking, as I'm listening to you guys, the one thing that was really liberating for me was the day that I realized that I had no control over anybody else. And I tell you what, my first reaction is, I remember sitting in my living room and I was mad. I was pissed at a situation that it was something that kept happening and I had no control over, and I didn't like it. And I was pissed, and I stood up, and when I realized that I had no control over anybody else, I stood up and I screamed. I was livid. I was so angry, and I screamed and I cussed, and then I stopped for a minute and I thought, wait, let me think about this. So all I have to deal with is this right here. This is the only thing I can control. That's actually liberating. And that's been huge for me. And the control thing was a natural thing that happens to a lot of people who are in trauma, because it's trying to create a safe space and make sure they're safe. But man, that moment, I just remember being livid, just so angry and screaming. And then at the same time, feeling liberated.
Yeah, I think there's something we can't really control other people, but what we can control is our reaction to other people. And that's what you should try and control, isn't it? I mean, I think it's our natural human reaction, human instinct to try and change, or other people who are perhaps affecting us negatively and causing us to react. We want to change their way of thinking. Why do they act that way? Why do they say that? Why do they do that? And you want to change them, make them realise what they're doing wrong. But it's a hard thing to do, change other people. But I think actually the most important thing is, can I change the way I react to it? The way because if let's say it's stressing me out, or that's not good for me. So how can is there any way I can change the way I respond and deal with that person?
Exactly.
I think that's the thing, isn't it? Really, something.
Yeah,
This is
I
what I've
say
been
you're
saying
responsible for your actions and your reactions.
Exactly, and this is what I've been saying for years, is we can't change for anyone else. We can't. That's up to them. And if they want to continue to judge you, then they're not respecting our boundaries, not respecting us, which means they're devaluing us. So all I can say is, fuck off.
I'm with you on that one.
And on that note, our time is up.
That's a good contender.
That's an ending. So next week we're back at 7 p.m. UK. So it's this time next week. I don't know what time that is, Ashley, for you.
I will look. Gosh, I can't believe it's going to be November. Holy smokes.
1st of November next week.
That's like 1 o'clock. That's fine.
Okay. Nick, you can't make it, can you?
No, so I got my son staying with me. But
that's fine. We're discussing how does mental health affect our sleep.
Oh,
that's a good one.
So, Ashley, that's going to be a big one for you. So,
I'll watch the show afterwards. I'll definitely watch it afterwards. That's a good one.
Absolutely. So, we'll see you next week. And, yeah, I'll see you later.
Thank you.
Nice to see you, Lisa. Bye.